Hey, how you guys doing? I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about what's going on in our class. So, first of all, um, grading. If you haven't gotten your essay back, know that I'm working on it. There's actually only four of you that have yet to get their essay back. I'm hoping to get it done right after I do this. That's the next thing I'm going to do is uh, is finish those four essays. But the rest of you got them back, and make sure again. I sent out last week a little document explaining how to find my comments, and some of you have read those comments, and I appreciate that. And some of you have read those comments and emailed me and said, "Hey, look, I have a question about the way you graded the essay." And you know what? Um, Sadly enough, that makes me really happy. Uh, the best way to have a conversation about an essay will be to be able to talk to you, and we can do this over the phone, and we'd both be in front of our computer and looking at the document, right, and talk about any questions that you have. And if we have that conversation, I think it should start with questions and concerns that you have. And so if we're going to have that conversation, think about what you want to say and the questions that you have about the grade. But please read your comments, and please contact me if you have questions. Talking about the way I assessed your essay, and talking about what you expect, or what you do as a writer and why you do it, and then and why I respond the way I do. I think is probably the best way to become a better writer, is to provide to get feedback on your writing, but then have a conversation about it. And so I'm happy to do that. We can do it in my office hours, and the office hours are posted online. We can do it face to face in the office hours. We can do it on the phone. Um, and my phone number is on the syllabus. Or, someone emailed me a question about, hey, look, my citations, you said my citations weren't correct. And I think they were. And it was a very specific question, right? In-text citation. So I was able to get that student's essay up on the computer, make a video kind of like this one, walk through and say, hey, look, this is wrong and this is why it's wrong. So if you have questions about my comments, please let me know. That's a good way to learn. And I want you to learn, and I want you to improve. And I want you not to feel confused or frustrated by the grade that you have gotten. Along those lines, you, I'm not, I'm not saying, because this is sent out to, about 40 or 50 students. So I'm not saying all of you have not been watching the skills videos on our online class, but you need to make sure you watch those videos closely and mimic them as closely as possible when we're talking about formatting. For example, next week we'll have a video on a works cited page. You need to watch that, and you need to make sure that your works cited page mimics the works cited page seen in the video. All right. It needs to be as close as possible. When we talk about MLA format, I mean, there are a lot of students that are not formatting their essays correctly, and I'm wondering whether or not they watch the formatting video. Okay. We're talking about the spacing being incorrect, the margins being the wrong size, the font being the wrong font. Some people alter the font as a way to make their essay look longer, but let me just say there's no assessment or measure for length of essay. There is about development. Like if you write a 2-page essay as opposed to a 4-page essay, you obviously didn't develop your ideas, or they're not complex enough, right? But if you write something that needs to be 4 pages and you write 3.5, or 3 3/4, right? That might be fine. But if you try to stretch it to 4 pages by changing the font or changing the spacing, there is an objective assessment on MLA format, and you will be punished or penalized for MLA format, where you wouldn't necessarily be penalized for something like length of essay, because that's not really a requirement. So make sure you're formatting and you watch those videos closely. We need to see MLA format. It's a pretty basic thing, but it's something that is important to this class. Email me with questions. I did want to look at sample theses, and I really hope I got names off of this. So the formatting on this bottom one isn't great, but just in the sense of, for some reason, let me just fix this up. But we're not looking at grammar, but a lot of students, when they wrote their thesis, were much too general. And it was a very typical thing to be so general. In the prompt, I said, try to find a specific show and discuss a specific aspect. Many students talked about TV in general, and then you were penalized because you weren't specific enough. And other people wanted to list off all the different ways, all the different topics that a show discusses, as opposed to listing off topics isn't the same thing as explaining the impact of a single topic. Those are two different things. But let's look at this example, and we'll look at this example as an example that's a little too broad, and then we'll look at an example that's a little bit more specific and kind of more of what I'm looking for. So this was a thesis to a student essay. It says, television certainly influences not one aspect of human society, but rather a wide variety of aspects, from socio-political agendas to teen pop culture and everything in between. So this might be true, but for a thesis, this wouldn't work because it's too broad. I mean, it's true, but to prove this, you would need 300 pages to prove it. So what you would want to do is not talk about television, but talk about a single show, and not talk about all aspects of socio-political and all aspects of teenage pop culture and all aspects in between. You would want to focus on one specific thing. All right. As to whether or not this is a good thing for our society's future is yet to be seen. However, there is no question as to its capacity for societal impact. So you have to give me what that impact is and what the show is in your thesis. And as we move to the next essay, just think about the same thing. How can we get specific with my argument? Let's look at the example that is more specific. Let's compare this one to the other one. This one was a standout to me. However, and again, I took this out of the intro, however, the directors and producers of the new TV show, The Good Doctor, are able to paint autism in a more positive light. So, okay, we have a single show, compare it to this one, which is just television, right? We have a single issue, autism, in a positive light. Here we have everything you can possibly think of. This show breaks social norms by creating a main character in a high-stakes role, which forces the audience to relate, at least on a human level, to this character that is placed before him. And look, it talks about the impact on the audience and makes the audience relate. And eventually this needs to be developed in the essay, but it's a specific show, it's a specific issue, autism, and then how it impacts the audience. So it's super specific. A writer like this, when I read this intro, and the thesis, I think to myself, this student knows what this student's going to write for the essay. This student has planned this and thought about this and has a specific goal in mind. When I read, maybe not this one, but just a more general thesis, I think to myself, this student is working on what he or she wants to write as he or she writes, that it's not really planned out and that we're kind of trying to figure it out as we go. We need to have a specific point right from the beginning and then work to prove it with specific examples. I hope this helps. I want you guys to all do well. I hope you guys are doing well. Email me with questions.